After an incredible season last year, the Vikings decided to trade away Sam Darnold and go with their draft pick from 2024 in JJ McCarthy as the starting quarterback. Whether or not that's going to pan out is very questionable, given that McCarthy suffered an injury and didn't play a single game all of last year. He's basically coming into his rookie season without having played football in a year and a half, especially early on in the year. I think the Vikings are going to struggle quite a bit. And it starts out with a road trip to face the Chicago Bears, a team that has really been trying to rebuild the past few seasons. And I think that they're starting to get close. Ben Johnson, now the head coach, formerly offensive coordinator for the Lions. We all know how the Lions did last season, going 15-2. I think the Bears have a chance to improve this season. Caleb Williams, he's a solid quarterback. And just all around, they are a better team than the Vikings. They don't have Justin Jefferson, but I don't think that in this game they're going to need somebody like that. The Bears will win to start the season.
Like Jonah kind of alluded to, this Vikings secondary is really lackluster and was a big concern going into the draft, and they didn't address it whatsoever. They brought in a couple free agents like Jeff Okuda and Isaiah Rodgers, but neither of those guys have really been lockdown corners in their careers, and I don't think it's going to really move the needle against a wide receiver room that is DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and a rookie Luther Burden, along with two tight ends that both have a lot of potential. The next week against the Falcons, you could consider a revenge game of sorts for whoever, considering Kirk Cousins is still a member of the Falcons. But it is Michael Penix's season for the Falcons after Kirk Cousins was ultimately benched for him towards the end of the year, and Michael Penix put up decent stats. I think it's going to be an interesting game, but this is one of the few games where I think the Vikings actually have a slightly better team. The Falcons maybe have a couple better players in some areas, but the wide receiver room for the Vikings is so much better than the Falcons. The running back room maybe a little bit more comparable. Bijan Robinson definitely has a lot more upside than Aaron Jones, but maybe they're a little comparable. I think the offensive line the Vikings have built is really solid, especially with some of the losses the Falcons have had. And defensively, the Falcons took a lot of hits on the defensive side of the ball. I do think the Vikings are just a little bit better here, especially at home. I think the Vikings get the win and will go to 500 in week two.
Then it's the Bengals at home, and the Bengals are going to be better this season. The defense still has a few question marks. Trey Hendrickson is still there for now, but the offense is where the Bengals just run away with it. Joe Burrow at quarterback, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins at wide receiver. Just it's a ridiculously good offense. And I think that they're going to pretty handily beat the Vikings, especially as the Vikings have to start getting ready to go overseas for back-to-back games. First one against the Steelers in Dublin, and Pittsburgh is going to be an interesting team. They brought in Aaron Rodgers, should probably have retired by now, but he hasn't. And it's going to be interesting to see how he does. He has DK Metcalf at wide receiver, which is going to be fun. Really, this is probably the best wide receiver core that Rodgers has had since he left the Packers. I think that they're going to be solid. Realistically, they're going to finish within, one or two games of 500 because it's the Steelers. And in Dublin, it's going to be close, but I actually like the Steelers to get this win over the Vikings.
It seems kind of weird, especially when the Vikings head coach is Kevin O'Connell. Can't get much more Irish than that. But I do think, like Jonah said, the Steelers have slightly more weapons, and I think the defense is going to be able to lock down Justin Jefferson or at least control him a lot more than most teams, especially when you have TJ Watt coming off the edge at JJ McCarthy. Maybe he panics a little bit since, like Jonah mentioned, this is technically his rookie year. Then it's in London the following week against the Browns. And I think this is the international game where they have a much better chance in because the Browns are just such a confusing team right now. They have five quarterbacks that they may throw in to be a starter at any point in the season with Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, Dylan Gabriel, Shadur Sanders, and Kenny Pickett. I would love to see just a sitcom of those five together, but overall, the weapons that the Browns have aren't that great. They're okay, but against some of these better teams, it's not going to really move the needle in their favor. Yes, they still have Jerry Duty. Yes, they drafted Quinshon Judkins. It's just not enough to compete. And I do think the Vikings will move to 2-3 here. I think this is a game that their defense can actually control the pace of the game and will keep the pressure off of JJ McCarthy. They do have a bye week after those back-to-back weeks abroad. But coming out of that bye week, it is against the reigning Super Bowl champs in the Philadelphia Eagles. They do get it at home, which maybe makes it a little bit better of a game for the Vikings. But overall, the Eagles are just such a better team. They have weapons everywhere. This is one of the few teams that might actually have a better wide receiver room than the Vikings, even though Justin Jefferson may be a little bit better than A.J. Brown. The depth that the Eagles have behind A.J. Brown, like Devonta Smith, like Jahan Dotson. Not to mention, you have the best running back in the NFL in Saquon Barkley behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL and a defense that has signed most of their stars. The Eagles are just the superior team in every single way.
Then it's a road trip to face the Chargers in LA. And on Thursday night, it's going to be an intriguing matchup, but I really like Justin Herbert. I think that Lad McConkey had a great rookie season. This Chargers defense actually should be pretty solid. All around, they are way better than the Vikings. And it's really, like I was saying earlier, JJ McCarthy is going to struggle early on in his NFL career. People aren't realizing that. I don't know why, but they're just expecting him to come in and be one of the top starters in the league. And that is completely unrealistic for somebody who hasn't played football in a year and a half and was questionable as to whether or not he should have even been selected in the first round. On Thursday night on the road, there's just no way that the Vikings are going to win this game. They're going to drop to 2-5.
It doesn't get much easier the following week on the road against the Lions, coming off of a 15-2 season, one of the best teams in the NFL, returning most of their starters as well, and hopefully a healthy Aiden Hutchinson. And I just, once again, don't think the Vikings can compete this year with the Lions after finishing one game behind them in the division. Lions defense is just going to be able to handle everything the Vikings throw their way, even with the weapons that Minnesota has. Aiden Hutchinson, I don't know if he ever was on the same team as JJ McCarthy at the same time, but he's going to have fun sacking another Michigan buddy consistently over and over again if he's able to remain healthy. Lions get the win, dropping the Vikings to 2-6 before another tough game the following week.
Yeah, fourth straight game in a row. That's just absolutely brutal for the Vikings. There's no way that they end up beating the Ravens at home. The Vikings have a good home field advantage, but I mean, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, there's no way that they're winning this game. I don't think it's even going to be close, to be honest. They're dropping to 2-7 here before a rematch with the Bears.
And even though they did lose to the Bears week one, maybe at this point in the season, JJ McCarthy starts to figure it out. The NFC North is also one of those divisions where it's very hard to go undefeated or lose every single game in your divisional play. Yes, the Lions did it last year, but even the Bears managed to get a win in the division last year. Granted, it was in week 18 against the Packers when they were resting their starters. But I do think at home, maybe the Vikings can get a win over the Bears here. Maybe the Bears struggle a little bit towards the midpoint of the season where their schedule gets a little bit more difficult. So I do think the Vikings have a better chance here and will get the win over the Bears here, moving to 3-7 before playing the Packers the following week. And the Packers are going to be an interesting team. Offensively, I think they are in great shape. Jordan Love is looking better and better every single year. Josh Jacobs still a solid running back. They drafted a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in years. Packers fans are just absolutely ecstatic about that, especially since Matthew Golden was a stud in college. The wide receiver room is just so much better now. The questions really are on the defensive side. After Jair Alexander walked and then ultimately signed with the Ravens, this Packers secondary is extremely weak outside of Xavier McKinney, but he can't do it all. He needs some support, and I don't know if the secondary is going to help him a bunch. But the defensive line is still pretty good. The linebackers are still pretty decent. I think the offense is really all you're going to need here, even though you're playing against one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, like Justin Jefferson. I do think at Lambeau, the Packers will have the advantage and will get the win here, dropping the Vikings to 3-8.
And then they go on the road to see an old friend in Sam Darnold, starting quarterback for Seattle now. This one's not going to be easy because Seattle also has a solid wide receiver core. Jackson Smith-Njigba going to be the leader in that room now. And without DK Metcalf, I think that Seattle is going to struggle a little bit more this season. I really don't know how well Sam Darnold's going to play either. I would be shocked if he repeated an MVP caliber season. I think that's completely unlikely to happen. This is a game that the Vikings really do have a chance in. I don't think Seattle's going to be nearly as good this season. The Vikings on the road here, I think can actually pull off a win and spoil a revenge game for Sam Darnold.
And it really comes down to this Seahawks offensive line is very, very bad. And I think Sam Darnold will spend a good amount of time this season on his back just because he's playing against some of the best pass rushers in the league, and the offensive line will not be able to stop them. Commanders the following week for the Vikings is going to be a pretty interesting game. You get a matchup against some rookie quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels versus JJ McCarthy, but Jaden Daniels has a year of starting experience and led this Commanders team to the playoffs and knocked off the number one team in the Detroit Lions in the divisional round last year before ultimately losing in a blowout fashion to the eventual Super Bowl champs. The Commanders are just going to be the superior team in every which way. Unless Jaden Daniels falls into a sophomore slump, which I don't think he will, the Commanders should be right back where they were. Second, just nipping at the heels of the Eagles for a division title, but still one of the best teams out there. Commanders get the win, dropping the Vikings to 4-9.
And then it's Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. They also brought in George Pickens to bolster the wide receiver room. It feels like the Cowboys are, finally trying to make some useful free agency additions, but they haven't addressed the running back room yet. And that is a major concern. I think that the Cowboys aren't going to be as good next season, especially as some people are hoping for them to be, but they're still going to be better than the Vikings. I mean, just all around, I don't think this Vikings team is very good. I've been saying it all video, gonna keep saying it, especially on the road Sunday night. Dallas is going to get the win here.
And then it's a game against the Giants. This could be a true matchup between rookie quarterbacks, JJ McCarthy's first season. And maybe at this point in the season, the Giants put in Jackson Dart, who they traded up back into the first round to take in this year's NFL draft. But I do think overall the Vikings have a slightly better team. Yes, Malik Neighbors was a stud last year and is going to be a great weapon for whoever the Giants quarterback is at this point. Most likely Jackson Dart at this point in the season, but the rest of the offense just can't compare to this Vikings offense. Defensively, maybe the Giants have a little bit of an edge as their defensive line is very, very solid with Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau, but they also drafted Darius Alexander out of Toledo, and the number 3 overall pick took Abdul Carter, who is one of the best pass rushers college football has ever seen and is probably going to continue to be as dominant as he was at the NFL level. Maybe the Giants can make this close. Maybe they can pull off a win, but I do think offensively the Vikings have the advantage. Vikings get the win and move to 5-10 before 2 games in a row that are divisional games.
And the first of those is another one against the Lions. And we all know how this is going to go. The first time wasn't easy when they went on the road. This time, at least they're at home. I think I mentioned before that the Vikings have a really solid home field advantage. I don't think it's going to matter even slightly in this one. They're just they're so much worse than Detroit right now. They have a long ways to go, I think. I would be surprised if Justin Jefferson doesn't want out of Minnesota if they don't improve these next few seasons by the time his rookie contract is up as well.
And then to finish off the season, it is hosting the Green Bay Packers. And we kind of mentioned it earlier when they played the Packers at Lambeau that this game really could go either way just because the Packers defense has some questions. And I think at home, with not a lot at stake for the Vikings, maybe they're able to just air the ball out to Justin Jefferson repeatedly and pull off a win because the Packers secondary can't keep up. Maybe the Packers are playing for something at this point, so they could still have their starters in. But like I mentioned earlier, when the Vikings played the Bears for the second time this season, it's very hard for NFC North teams to beat each other twice. And I do think the Vikings can get a win over the Packers at home here. So they finished the season 6-11, a significant downgrade from last year, but this is a much different team and a much harder schedule.
Yeah, last season the Vikings did go 14-3, which was pretty remarkable considering Sam Darnold was the starting quarterback. This season, I think that the ceiling is going to be way lower than 14-3, down to 10-7, and the floor going to be all the way down at 4-13. I don't want it to seem like we're hating on JJ McCarthy, but he really isn't going to be that great in his rookie season. I didn't think he was going to be that great last season before he got hurt. You throw on another year of not playing in a live football game, and I think this is going to be a an extreme disappointment for Vikings fans. The Vegas over/under is at 8.5 and favoring the over. I think that that is absolutely ridiculous, and really, it's just more emphasis on this mainstream narrative coming from, places like ESPN that McCarthy is going to be great right out of the gate. And I think that that's completely unrealistic, and people really need to just start looking at the actual facts here. It's just not the case.
And that's not to say that JJ McCarthy can't be a great quarterback or just a good quarterback in the NFL. It's probably going to be an uphill battle for him, especially coming off of that injury, but he's in one of the best situations possible to succeed. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but if you want to think about it, he's kind of in the same situation that Brock Purdy found himself in when he was drafted by the 49ers as the Mr. Irrelevant pick. He has one of the better offensive minds as his head coach, like Brock Purdy did with Kyle Shanahan, and has some of the best weapons in the league, like Justin Jefferson, like Aaron Jones, and like the rest of the receiver room, including TJ Hawkinson, and an offensive line that is pretty decent. If the Vikings were able to make Sam Darnold after many years of just mediocrity or just being bad, then JJ McCarthy could easily step into a similar role. I'm not going to say he's going to put up MVP numbers like Sam Darnold did last year, but he can be a good quarterback. I just don't think in his first year after an injury, he's going to be able to see that kind of success, even with these weapons. But if he does, then we end up seeing them hit that ceiling around 10 wins. But I do think that is a little hard for them to attain in his first season as the starter. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our content, and we will see you in the next one.